Welcome back to the Rhine Report. This afternoon is a follow-up to my earlier report, which incorporated Michael Bopak's account of today's decision by Scotus in the matter of the Alien Enemies Act 1798 and the unlawful removal of 250 Venezuelans accused of being gang members and somehow making that qualify for the purposes of the act, which also requires that there's a war. And the idea of this foreign terrorist business is nonsense, but it's regurgitated by the court, and I'll show you how it's used. The court today issued another devastating, wrongful, per curiam, and very cowardly ruling and opinion, as Michael pointed out. I think he did a great job quickly responding to and explaining the order. So I'll just discuss some aspects of it that are of interest, which highlight the way the corruption and cowardice of the court works. The first instance is found in the first paragraph of the per curiam, and I'll give you that as a quotation from the per curiam opinion by Chief Justice Roberts. This matter concerns the detention and removal of Venezuelan nationals believed to be members of Tren de Aragua, an entity that the State Department has designated as a foreign terrorist organization. Number of citations here. The President issued proclamation number 10903 invoking the Alien Enemies Act to detain and remove Venezuelan nationals, quote, who are members of TDA, invocation of the Alien Enemies Act regarding the invasion of the United States by Tren de Aragua. This is too absurd to follow this way. Some caveats should have been put in there to explain that these are conclusory allegations and misstatements of law, or possibly incorrect understanding of the law. But never mind. Let's go on from there. So here in the first paragraph, the court is implying the validity of the proclamation by not stating that the government's legal position is not under consideration by the court on this date with this per curiam. The President issued it as an order to detain and remove these people, but the court fails to assess the legality of the use of ACA 1798 as a means to detain and deport allegedly gang members, and uses the government's term foreign terrorists to describe them. It doesn't have a comeback on the other side. It's just a conclusory allegation from which we're meant to understand what's going on here. Nor does it address the term invasion as used in plain language inside the ACA 1798. The court leaves us, therefore, with the impression that it accepts the government's position using the ACA as a legitimate means to take action. In paragraph 2, the court runs roughshod over TROs, temporary restraining orders, which are not appealable, and really just simply declares, and I quote, we construe these TROs as appealable. And it cites to a case, Carson versus American Brands. All this means is when they feel like hearing a case in which the government brings the case and it's not an appealable order, they're going to damn well hear it and make it an appealable order by turning it from a TRO into a preemptive injunction or something, more appealable than a TRO. Now, in paragraph 3, it admits it's not reaching any substantial arguments. Well, thank God for that. But it also fails to comment or decide what should be done to redress and undo the damage done by the government in unlawfully removing these victims to a foreign country's prison, and goes into a useless diatribe on the only means for the victims to get due process. Our friend, habeas corpus. You guessed it, folks. And that means, as construed by the court in Rumsfeld, that's Rumsfeld versus Padilla, 2004, 2002, 2004. That's the case in which I wrote an amicus brief defending Padilla. So we're left with the only possibility for them is filing in the jurisdiction, according to this court, where they're being held, where they're being detained. Now, we know this is freaking impossible. They've been unlawfully removed outside of the jurisdiction that was the originating jurisdiction. And it goes on to quote the per curiam, for core habeas petitions, quote, jurisdiction lies in only one district, the district of confinement, as in Rumsfeld versus Padilla. The detainees are confined in Texas. So, I mean, this immediately disenfranchises them in many respects and prevents them getting full Fifth and 14th Amendment due process rights. I mean, and it's further and worse than that. It's disingenuous bullshit because it does not account for those who are outside the jurisdictional reach of those originating courts, where they were held, and others where they've been moved to distant locations, again, disenfranchising, no ease of access to lawyers and process. The court also denies that all of these detainees are a class. That's important because it means that each and every one of them, 250 plus Garcia, plus the hairdresser, all of them will have to file separate and distinct writs of habeas corpus. So there we go. And finally, the court never mentions how the detainees, the 250 Venezuelans originally shipped to El Salvador, can they find redress given their imprisonment in a foreign country by arrangement made by the U.S. government to pay El Salvador for their confinement? The court expects us what? Just to forget about them? This is a disgraceful decision by an acknowledged Trumpist fascist court that indicates to me that they will never decide a case to hold him and his colleague Nazis to account for their crimes and unlawful actions, including his remaining in office in perpetuity. Watch out.